Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear brothers and sisters, and welcome back to the Islamic SHAHADA channel. In the vast expanse of northern New Mexico, where the horizon blurs into an ocean of sand and sagebrush, silence has a sound of its own. The winds carry no city noise here, only the whisper of the desert, ancient and patient. The land around Abiquiu stretches endlessly, its earth painted in layers of red, gold, and ochre, the same tones that once inspired Georgia O'Keeffe's timeless canvases. It is a place that seems forgotten by time, empty, raw, yet profoundly alive. And there, amid the stillness, something unexpected rises from the dust. A dome built of adobe and sun-baked earth. A mosque, soft in its curves, humble in its presence, standing against the blue expanse of the New Mexican sky. It is called Dar al-Islam. In Arabic, Dar al-Islam means the abode of Islam, a home for faith. But here, far from the bustling cities of the Middle East or the mosques of American suburbs, the name takes on a deeper meaning. It is not just a place of prayer, but a living question. Can faith truly take root in the desert? The story of Dar al-Islam begins with this question. A dream born in the late 1970s, when a small group of Muslim visionaries looked westward toward the empty desert of New Mexico and saw not emptiness, but potential. To them, the desert was not barren. It was fertile ground for something timeless, a spiritual experiment in one of America's most unlikely landscapes. Today, nearly half a century later, the adobe walls still stand. The call to prayer still echoes faintly across the canyon winds, and though few live here permanently, the presence of this sanctuary endures, quiet, contemplative, and enduring like the desert itself. To some, Dar al-Islam is a relic of idealism, a utopian dream faded by the years. To others, it remains a symbol of what faith can build when stripped of luxury, politics, and noise. In 2025, its mosque still opens its doors to travelers, seekers, and believers who come not for spectacle, but for stillness, to retreat, to learn, and to remember what it means to live slowly, intentionally, and close to God. In the late 1970s, as America grappled with a growing sense of spiritual restlessness, a small group of Muslim visionaries began to dream of something extraordinary. An Islamic sanctuary in the heart of the New Mexican desert. It was 1979, a year of global transformation. The Iranian Revolution dominated headlines, oil politics reshaped the world, and in the United States, an increasing number of young intellectuals were turning toward Eastern philosophies and Islam in search of meaning. Amid this climate of curiosity and upheaval, a new idea began to take root. What if Islam could find a home in the American landscape itself, not imported, but organically grown? This idea would soon become Dar al-Islam, the abode of Islam. The project was founded through the efforts of Nuruddin Durki, a pioneering American Muslim teacher, translator, and Sufi scholar who envisioned a self-sustaining Muslim community that could serve as both a spiritual retreat and a model for Islamic living in the West. Durki, who had studied under traditional scholars in Egypt and the Middle East, returned to the U.S. with a mission to establish a place where Islam could be lived, taught, and experienced authentically within the American context. Support came from a combination of local converts, students, and international benefactors. One of the key patrons was Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, the founding father of the United Arab Emirates, who donated funds through the Zayed Foundation Charitable Foundation to bring the project to life. This rare partnership between American converts and Arab philanthropists reflected a shared vision that transcended borders, to root the principles of Islam in the soil of the American Southwest. The founders searched for a location that embodied tranquility, isolation, and a sense of divine presence. They eventually found it in Abiquiu, New Mexico, a high desert region famous for its vast mesas, red cliffs, and endless horizons, a landscape once painted by artist Georgia O'Keeffe for its mystical, almost sacred beauty. The remoteness of Abiquiu offered both challenge and serenity. No city lights, no noise, only wind, sand, and silence. For the founders, that silence was not emptiness. It was space for reflection, remembrance, and the whisper of faith. By 1980, land was purchased, over 1,600 acres of desert and hills, and construction began on what would become one of America's most iconic Islamic architectural landmarks. The dream was not just to build a mosque, but to create a desert utopia, a community that harmonized spirituality, ecology, and education. Plans included a mosque, madrasa, residential homes, and gardens that could thrive in the arid climate through sustainable design. But this wasn't merely about survival in the desert. It was about creating an American expression of Islam. Dar al-Islam was conceived as a living statement that Islam could flourish not only in urban immigrant enclaves or distant homelands, but in the heart of America's rawest landscapes. Today, when visitors step onto the grounds of Dar al-Islam, they stand on the realization of that original dream, a vision born in the turbulence of the 1970s, sustained through decades of devotion, and still alive in 2025 as one of the longest-standing Muslim institutions of the American Southwest. Rising gently from the ochre sands of northern New Mexico stands a structure that seems to have grown from the desert itself, the Dar al-Islam Mosque, designed by the legendary Egyptian architect Hassan Fathy. Built in the early 1980s, this mosque is not only one of the most distinctive Islamic buildings in North America, but also one of Fathy's final masterpieces, a seamless blend of Islamic spirituality, environmental harmony, and southwestern earthiness. Fathy, renowned for his human-centered approach to architecture, rejected modern industrial methods. Instead, he drew from ancient wisdom, from the Nubian villages of Egypt to the mud brick cities of North Africa, to craft buildings that breathe with the land. For Dar al-Islam, he insisted on using adobe, the same sun-dried clay and straw mixture used for centuries by the Pueblo peoples of New Mexico. To him, this wasn't just a practical choice. It was a philosophical statement. Adobe represented humility, continuity, and respect for nature, principles deeply resonant with Islam's teaching on stewardship of the earth. Khalifa. Construction began without the roar of heavy machinery. Local workers, volunteers, and craftsmen molded bricks by hand, allowing the structure to emerge slowly, almost meditatively, from the desert floor. The mosque's design followed traditional Islamic architectural principles, a central dome, pointed arches, and a courtyard, yet Fathy infused it with the contours and textures of the American Southwest. The dome rises like a sand dune against the horizon, while the soft curves of the walls echo the natural erosion of nearby mesas. The result is not an imitation of Middle Eastern architecture, but an American-born expression of Islamic design. Inside, the light is subdued and golden, filtered through small geometric openings that cast intricate patterns across the earthen walls. There are no ornate decorations, no marble, no extravagance. The simplicity itself becomes sacred. When the call to prayer echoes through the courtyard, it seems to blend with the wind, as if the desert itself responds. Over 4 decades later, in 2025, the mosque still stands strong, a testament to Fathy's genius and to the enduring vision of Dar al-Islam's founders. It continues to serve as a space for Friday prayers, community gatherings, interfaith retreats, and architectural study tours. Students of sustainable design visit from universities across the United States to learn from Fathy's timeless techniques, low carbon, low cost, and high beauty. In an age dominated by glass and steel, the Adobe Mosque of Dar al-Islam remains a quiet defiance, proof that architecture can be both spiritual and sustainable, rooted in faith yet open to the land. It is not just a mosque in the desert. It is a conversation between Islam and the American landscape, still whispering softly after all these years. In the early 1980s, as the adobe walls of Dar al-Islam began to take shape under the desert sun, a small group of believers arrived. about 30 Muslim families drawn by faith, idealism, and the promise of a new beginning. They came from across America and beyond, converts from New York and California, immigrants from Egypt, Sudan, Pakistan, and Morocco, united by a shared vision to build an Islamic life in the heart of the American wilderness. They came not as settlers seeking comfort, but as pilgrims seeking meaning. Life in Abiquiu, New Mexico, was harsh. The high desert is breathtaking but unforgiving. Temperatures soaring in the summer, plunging below freezing in winter, and miles of open land separating them from the nearest town. Yet, for those first residents, this isolation was part of the calling. They believed that by distancing themselves from the distractions of modern America, they could live closer to the essence of Islam: simplicity, devotion, and community. Together, they began to build. Using the same adobe techniques that shaped the mosque, families constructed small homes, domed and earth-colored, blending into the surrounding mesas. They cultivated small gardens and date-like orchards, drawing water from nearby wells and learning to survive the rhythms of desert life. A modest Islamic school was established for their children, teaching Quran, Arabic, and basic sciences. Prayer punctuated their days. At dawn, the soft call of Adhan echoed over the empty valley, and at sunset, the horizon glowed with the peace of communal worship. But their dream was not without struggle. Funds were limited. The project relied heavily on donations, which were often irregular. Winters were long, summers merciless, and many families found the isolation difficult to bear. Some stayed only a few years before returning to city life, while others remained steadfast, tending to the land, repairing adobe walls after storms, and keeping the Jama'ah alive through sheer perseverance. Despite the hardships, what they created was remarkable, a living example of Islam's adaptability, proof that faith could root itself even in the most unlikely soil. Visitors in those early years often describe Dar al-Islam as both primitive and profound, a community that struggled materially but thrived spiritually. Their founder, Nuruddin Durki, once described their mission as building Islam not with concrete, but with hearts. And in many ways, that spirit still defines Dar al-Islam today. Though the population has changed over the decades, the memory of those early families, their sacrifices, their resilience, their quiet prayers in the desert wind, continues to shape the soul of this extraordinary place. By the early 1990s, the golden years of Dar al-Islam's residential dream began to fade beneath the weight of reality. What had started as a bold social experiment, a self-sustaining Muslim village in the American desert, was facing challenges that even the strongest faith could not fully overcome. The same isolation that once promised spiritual purity now made everyday life increasingly difficult. Funding, once steady and generous, began to decline. Much of Dar al-Islam's early support had come from international donors, particularly from charitable foundations in Saudi Arabia and the Gulf region. But as global priorities shifted after the Gulf War and economic pressures mounted, contributions slowed dramatically. Without those funds, maintaining infrastructure, schools, and housing became a struggle. What had been envisioned as a thriving Muslim township slowly transitioned into a more symbolic presence in the New Mexican landscape. Families who had once braved the harsh winters and scorching summers began to drift away. For many, it wasn't a loss of faith, it was a matter of survival. The nearest towns offered few job opportunities, and the long distances made access to higher education for their children nearly impossible. Young people left for college and seldom returned. Parents followed, seeking livelihoods in Albuquerque, Santa Fe, or beyond. By the late 1990s, the once bustling residential compound had grown quiet. The adobe homes still stood, but many were empty, their walls echoing with the prayers of a generation that had moved on. Yet Dar al-Islam did not die. Instead, it transformed. The community recognized that while the dream of a permanent village might have faded, its spiritual and educational mission could endure. The organization restructured itself, shifting focus from residential living to education, outreach, and spiritual retreats. The mosque, once the heart of a small neighborhood, became a destination for visitors seeking solitude, learning, and connection. As one elder reflected years later, "We came to build a village, but what we built instead was a sanctuary." By embracing change rather than resisting it, Dar al-Islam preserved its essence. It became a bridge between worlds, between past and present, between faith and modern life. And though fewer people live permanently on its land today, thousands have passed through its gates, leaving with a piece of the desert's quiet wisdom and the enduring reminder that even when dreams shift, their spirit can still live on. More than 4 decades after its founding, Dar al-Islam still stands, quietly yet purposefully, in the vast desert of Abiquiu, New Mexico. The dream of a self-sustaining Muslim village may have evolved, but its spiritual heartbeat remains alive. Today, in 2025, Dar al-Islam has become one of the most respected nonprofit Islamic educational and spiritual centers in the United States, a place where faith, learning, and reflection meet under the endless desert sky. Spanning over 1,600 acres of rugged land, the Adobe complex has transformed into a living sanctuary that attracts visitors, scholars, and seekers from across the nation. Its once modest community mosque now serves as the heart of an active retreat center, hosting programs that blend Islamic spirituality, environmental consciousness, and interfaith understanding. The silence that once symbolized isolation has become a spiritual resource, a refuge from the noise of the modern world. In 2024 alone, Dar al-Islam hosted 9 major retreats and dozens of smaller gatherings, continuing to expand its national reach. One of the most notable events was the Rumi Center Muraqabah Retreat in July 2024, a deeply immersive program centered on Islamic meditation, dhikr, and self-purification through reflection and poetry. Participants, Muslims and non-Muslims alike, gathered from over 20 states to practice mindfulness under the desert stars, guided by spiritual teachers from both the U.S. and abroad. Each retreat brings together anywhere from 80 to 150 participants, filling the modest guest houses and tented areas scattered around the property. Meals are communal, conversations spontaneous, and the rhythm of daily life shaped by prayer and reflection. The retreat programs cover a wide range of themes: spiritual introspection, Quranic contemplation, Islamic art and calligraphy, eco-conscious living, and interfaith dialogue. Dar al-Islam has become a meeting point for those who wish to disconnect from the world to reconnect with God. In addition to its retreat programs, the center regularly hosts educational seminars and teacher training workshops for Islamic schools across the United States. These programs, often in partnership with organizations such as ISNA, Islamic Society of North America, and Zaytuna College alumni, explore how classical Islamic principles can be integrated into modern American education. Scholars, artists, and spiritual leaders are invited to speak about topics like environmental ethics in Islam, the psychology of worship, and the role of creativity in faith. One of Dar al-Islam's enduring strengths in 2025 is its commitment to interfaith dialogue. The center has hosted joint sessions with local Christian and Jewish groups from Santa Fe and Taos, encouraging honest conversations about God, compassion, and community. The mosque's open-door policy welcomes visitors of all backgrounds, whether they come for prayer, silence, or curiosity. Tourists often describe it as one of the most serene places in the American Southwest, a spiritual landscape that transcends religion. The institution also maintains a strong online presence through virtual lectures, live-streamed retreats, and educational archives, allowing people who cannot travel to New Mexico to still engage with its teachings. Following the post-pandemic resurgence of spiritual travel, attendance in 2024 to 2025 has reached record levels, with many programs filling months in advance. But perhaps the most profound aspect of Dar al-Islam today is its quiet relevance. It stands apart from the noise of modern religious discourse, neither political nor polemical, but deeply personal. For many who visit, it is less about conversion or ideology, and more about returning to stillness, to the rhythm of prayer, and to the humility of earth and clay. The adobe walls, sun-warmed and imperfect, seem to embody the very lesson the founders hoped to teach: that true faith endures not through grandeur, but through sincerity. As the sun sets over the Chama River Valley, the call to prayer still rises, soft, unamplified, carried by the desert wind. It echoes across the same mesas that witnessed the first bricks being laid more than 40 years ago. And in that sound lies the essence of Dar al-Islam, a living legacy, a spiritual anchor, and a reminder that even in the most unlikely of places, faith continues to bloom. In 2025, the Muslim presence in New Mexico remains small but significant, a quiet thread woven into the state's vast cultural tapestry. With a total population of just over 2.1 million people, New Mexico's Muslim community is estimated at around 12,000 individuals scattered across cities like Albuquerque, Las Cruces, and Santa Fe. Though modest in number, these communities represent a remarkable diversity: immigrants from South Asia, the Middle East, and North Africa, African-American Muslims, and a growing number of American-born converts who found Islam through personal reflection rather than heritage. The largest and most organized community is in Albuquerque, home to several mosques and Islamic centers, including the Islamic Center of New Mexico, ICNM, founded in the early 1980s. The center hosts daily prayers, Friday khutbahs, youth programs, and open houses for interfaith visitors. In Las Cruces, a smaller but active congregation maintains the Southern New Mexico Islamic Center, serving both local families and Muslim students at New Mexico State University. And in Santa Fe, a city more known for its art galleries and New Age spirituality than for its mosques, a small but committed Muslim group, about 400 to 500 active members, gathers regularly for prayers, study circles, and community dinners. Though their numbers are few, their faith has taken root in the desert soil, growing quietly but steadily. Across this landscape of sparse minarets and wide horizons, Dar al-Islam has become a spiritual magnet, a place of refuge, reflection, and renewal for Muslims from across the state. For many, visiting Dar al-Islam feels like stepping outside of time itself. Here, there are no city noises, no glowing billboards, no distractions, only sand, wind, and the steady rhythm of prayer. Families often drive hours from Albuquerque or Santa Fe to attend weekend retreats, Quran study sessions, or simply to spend a few days in silence among the adobe domes. Some come to introduce their children to a living piece of American Islamic history. Others come to reconnect with their faith in solitude. The contrast is striking. While the urban mosques of Albuquerque serve as centers of daily communal life, Dar al-Islam offers something different: a return to contemplation, to the essence of worship without the bustle of society. For Muslims living in New Mexico, this dual experience, one rooted in modern urban life, the other in timeless spiritual retreat, reflects the broader American Muslim journey, adapting to the landscape while preserving faith. Despite its small population, the Muslim community in New Mexico is increasingly visible. Interfaith partnerships, university outreach programs, and social initiatives have helped dispel old stereotypes and foster genuine understanding. Many Muslim professionals now work in healthcare, academia, and renewable energy sectors, areas central to New Mexico's economy. The annual Ramadan open houses in Santa Fe and Albuquerque often attract hundreds of non-Muslim guests, a testament to the growing curiosity and respect toward Islam in this part of the American Southwest. Still, in a state where minarets are rare and the desert stretches endlessly to the horizon, one landmark continues to define the spiritual landscape: Dar al-Islam. Its adobe dome rises softly against the New Mexican sky. neither loud nor imposing but quietly present, like a prayer made visible. For Muslims in this frontier state, it stands as both a symbol and a sanctuary, a reminder that even in the most unexpected places, faith endures, humbly yet unshakably. In a world where most institutions measure success by profit margins and fundraising goals, Dar al-Islam has quietly followed a different path. Its endurance has never been defined by wealth, but by purpose, discipline, and a shared belief that sincerity sustains what money cannot. Today, nearly 4 decades after its founding, Dar al-Islam continues to operate primarily through community donations, program fees, and volunteer contributions. There is no corporate sponsor, no major endowment, no marketing campaign. Instead, its survival depends on the steady rhythm of believers who come to learn, to reflect, and to give back. Each retreat, each educational seminar, each open house event generates not only modest revenue, but also a renewed sense of connection, a reminder that Islamic learning thrives through shared responsibility, not financial excess. But sustainability here goes far beyond finances. Over the years, the community has embraced ecological stewardship as a reflection of their faith. The vast New Mexico desert surrounding the complex has taught them restraint, patience, and balance, values deeply rooted in Islam's vision of humanity's role as caretakers of the earth. Solar panels now power parts of the facility, reducing dependence on conventional energy. Water conservation systems recycle runoff for gardens and landscaping. Buildings are constructed and maintained using locally sourced adobe, just as architect Hassan Fathy once envisioned, blending environmental respect with spiritual design. This quiet commitment to ecological responsibility is not just about surviving the desert. It's about embodying Tawheed, the oneness of creation, the harmony between humans and nature. Here, faith manifests not only in prayer, but in the deliberate act of living lightly upon the earth. In recent years, Dar al-Islam has also emerged as a hub for collaboration between universities, architects, and Islamic organizations across the United States. Academic partnerships with institutions like the University of New Mexico and other Islamic study centers have produced research on Islamic architecture, education, and spiritual ecology. Workshops now explore how sacred design can influence emotional well-being, how the built environment shapes worship, and how traditional Islamic aesthetics can inform sustainable architecture in modern America. Through these partnerships, Dar al-Islam continues to evolve, not as a relic of the past, but as a living laboratory of faith, education, and sustainability. It stands as proof that Islam's timeless principles can coexist with modern innovation when both are rooted in humility and intention. In the quiet expanse of northern New Mexico, where the desert meets the horizon and time itself seems to slow, Dar al-Islam stands not as a monument of ambition, but as a lesson in humility. The endless sand and sky have become a mirror, reflecting the inner landscape of those who come seeking peace. Here, solitude is not emptiness, it is presence. The silence of the desert does not isolate, it awakens. Over the years, many have misunderstood Dar al-Islam. Some have seen it as a failed experiment, an abandoned dream of an Islamic town that never fully materialized. But those who have walked its paths, prayed beneath its domes, and watched the sunset paint the walls in shades of gold, understand something deeper. Dar al-Islam was never meant to be just a town. It became less of a settlement and more of a teacher. It teaches the value of simplicity in an age obsessed with speed. It teaches patience in a time of constant noise. It reminds the believer that Islam is not measured by numbers, but by sincerity, by the quiet acts of devotion that often go unseen. For the American Muslim, Dar al-Islam represents something rare, a place where faith and landscape merge, where the vastness of the desert invites reflection on the vastness of the Creator. In a society defined by motion, this place whispers a counter message that stillness, too, is a form of worship. And beyond its walls, the lesson continues. The story of Dar al-Islam is not about retreating from the world, but about rediscovering God within it. It is a reminder that Islam in the West does not have to shout to be heard. Sometimes it simply has to be sincere, grounded, and alive. As the call to prayer echoes faintly against the New Mexico wind, one begins to understand the true miracle of Dar al-Islam is not in its architecture, nor in its programs, but in its quiet endurance. It has survived not through expansion or wealth, but through intention. It has shown that faith, when rooted deeply enough, can thrive even in the most desolate places. In the end, the desert gives its final lesson, that solitude is not the absence of connection, but the space where all connection begins. Here, in the silence, one does not escape the world. One finally returns to it, with a heart renewed. Thanks for watching until the end. I hope it was useful. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.